Hello, BookTube. Sorry for the late hour of the upload. I had a busy morning and then a busy afternoon and then suddenly, unexpectedly, a busy evening. But I'm here now with the first mail haul of the week. A small one, and that's good. We want to stay nice and reasonable. It's 4 packages here, and it ends in a box. So we'll see what this first one is. Okay. All right, this first one has been taped shut a number of times, and it has actual licked postage stamps on it. So I don't know if this is going to be from a publisher at all. Let's what is this thing here? A beautiful sunny day here in Boston, but unbelievably, the weather forecasts are predicting another storm, another big, wet, messy storm for the middle of the week, just like the middle of the week last week. Very annoying. Let's see what we've got here. Okay. All right. Okay. Right. I didn't request this. I don't recognize it. It's due in paperback in June. I certainly don't have any objections to the cover. This is by Pascal Garnier, and it is Gallic Noir, Volume 1. What that cover has to do with Gallic Noir, I have no idea. The cover inset says that it includes A26, How's the Pain, and the Panda Theory. Okay, I don't know what this is. Enter the world of Pascal Garnier, whose life's misfits take center stage. There is drama in the everyday, and the unexpected is always just around the corner. Dark, funny, shot through with menace, these perfectly crafted novellas are also affecting studies of human alienation. Massively acclaimed by both reviewers and fellow authors, Garnier has been compared to many other writers, yet he remains the master of his own unique brand of Gallic Noir. All right, all you people in France. Do you know this person? This is, okay, so this is from Gallic Books, and it is indeed 3 novellas. The A26, How's the Pain, and the Panda Theory. Okay. So 3 Gallic Noirs with, for some reason, a shark on the cover. Okay. All right. Well, that's it's a really bizarre way to start even a little mail haul. Let's move on to the next one here. See if we can pole our way back to relatively recognizable territory. Let's see. One of these thick padded envelopes. I mentioned in the past they've given me a great deal of trouble opening them, but they also give me a great deal of comfort because I send out 1 million of them every week, and it's nice to know that it is indeed hard to open them. Because you send out a package in the mail, you worry. Oh my. Oh my. Okay. Oh, I didn't request this one either. This comes out in the summer, in June. It's going to be a hardcover. This is Rising in Flames. Shermans March and the Fight for a New Nation. Wow. Okay. A new book about Sherman's March. Those of you who might not be up on your American history, this is the American Civil War. And the General William Tecumseh Sherman went on a march, carrying his own provender, going from inland all the way to the ocean, and destroying everything in his path. Often romanticized by the North in particular, obviously. If you read the primary sources, and there are plenty of them, letters and diaries and whatnot, newspaper accounts even, of Sherman's March, you get a very clear and probably factually incontrovertible sense of what his march was like. If you read a typical history, it's a bunch of boys out on holiday. It was scorched earth warfare. It was as brutal as warfare gets. Rampant looting, rampant pointless destruction, and also rampant rape. And you try telling that to his Civil War story. Well, anyway, maybe this author's one of those people. So let's see what we have here. Antebellum America was a deeply troubled country, divided by partisan gridlock and ideological warfare, angry voices in the streets and the state houses, furious clashes over race and immigration, and a growing chasm between immense wealth and desperate poverty. A little bit of headline grabbing there. The Civil War that followed brought America to the brink of self-destruction, but it also created a new country from the ruins of the old one, bolder and stronger than ever. Oh my God. Oh my God. No event in the war was more destructive or more important than William Sherman's legendary march through Georgia. It crippled the heart of the South's economy, freed thousands of slaves, and marked the beginning of a new era. Entirely true. This invasion not only quelled the Confederate forces and brought the war to an end, it transformed America, forcing it to reckon with a century of injustice. Richly researched and vividly rendered, J.D. Dickey, that's the name of the author, J.D. Dickey, reveals the hidden heroes of the campaign. Oh my. There were women actively involved in the military campaign and later. In civilian networks, their influence was to the point that Sherman himself even referred to one woman as the general, and African Americans who took active roles as soldiers, builders, and activists upon being freed. Rich with despair and hope, brutality and compassion, Rising in Flames tells the dramatic story of the Union's invasion of the Confederacy, and how this colossal struggle helped to create a new nation from the embers of the Old South. Okay. All right. J.D. Dickey is a New York Times bestselling author of Empire of Mud, The Secret History of Washington, D.C., and he's written prolifically elsewhere. Oh my. All right. I wonder if this is going to have the... Yeah, it does have the sources. Okay. Okay. All right. This is going to be trouble. Well, this is going to be one of those history books that I read eagerly and argue with eagerly. Because that description, helped to create a new nation from the embers of the Old South, is entirely true. But the description makes it sound positive. Exclusively positive. When... okay, this is going to be tricky. All right. Sherman's March was punitive. It was punitive. It was meant to be punitive. It was the kind of thing you do, the kind of thing that Rome did at the end of the Third War against Carthage, where it didn't just defeat Carthage's forces in battle and enslave the women and kill all the men and harvest whatever loot was available. Rome went considerably further than that. Wanton destruction, even apocryphally, but I believe it, salting large tracts of farmland so that nothing would ever grow there again. Which is fine. It's brutal, and it's far beyond the bounds of warfare, of what warfare should be. But it is relatively workable as an urban folklore, provided it's over there. Committing punitive warfare on your own soil with people who are going to be your fellow citizens when you win did indeed create a new nation. But, well, those of you who live in America, you ask me if you think there's complete amity between North and South here, 100 years after what Sherman did, and what Sherman didn't need to do. You won't find any harsher critic than the Confederacy, of the Confederacy than me. But it's going to be one of those history books I'm going to argue with. But you know, in my own defense, when I have done that in the past, and I've done it many times, where I argue with the basic premise of a book, I argue with its marshalling of its own facts, I argue with what it's left out, many times, by far the majority of the time, 90% of the time, although it might make the publicist for the book a little queasy, it might make the publisher a little queasy, the authors love it. That has been almost universally my experience. Only one or two times ever. I wrote a review of a biography of an American author by a recognized authority on that author, and I read the book and I studied his sources, and I was astounded. That author, in that author's lifetime, had been accused very credibly of major amounts of plagiarism. So credibly and so repeatedly and so major that a biography of that author that aspires to be comprehensive cannot possibly ignore the subject. You can still be partisan. You can still raise the subject and in order to defend the author. But you can't just ignore it. You can't pretend it never happened. And this author did. And I took him to task for it in my review. And he didn't like it at all. Bitterly angry about it. My position was absolutely defendable. It was impregnable, in fact. But nevertheless, he is in the extreme minority. Most authors, even when I rip apart their book, because I don't ever do it gratuitously, I'm not one of those people that fly under the flag of being a reviewer, but really they're just going with their gut. The most famous example of which being the most powerful reviewer in the world, who just recently retired and who never read a book with her brain. Oh, she only read books with her lymph nodes and her small intestine. That must have been so maddening for authors. When she gets to her third paragraph and says, yeah, I wasn't feeling it. It didn't make my spine tingle. Anyway, most authors, even when I have dug into their book with picks and hammers, have written to me or have written to their publisher and said, I really enjoyed that review. It was rough. It was really rough, but nevertheless, it wasn't wrong. It gave me a lot to think about. I've actually in a very hopeful note. I've had notes like that over the years quite a few times from authors of fiction, where I would think that would be the very last people who would give me such a thing. Novelists tend to like that sort of thing. They don't like bromides. They want to know if you've read their book with careful, honest attention, and a part of it really bothered you. Most of them kind of want to hear about it. But anyway, we shall see. I will report back on what I'm going to do with the Shermans March book that seems to like Shermans March. That's okay. I'm going to hold up this book. And the 4 or 5 people who know me, who are watching this, who know me in real life, one in particular, are going to just burst out laughing. And I hope you're watching it at home where you're not going to startle anyone. They're going to just burst out laughing. I've mentioned on this channel many times before that there are such things as Steve books. My friends and now this channel, it's pretty much easy to pick out what a Steve book is. And although the variety of candidates to be a Steve book is fairly wide, friends of mine have always, as a sort of shorthand humor, mentioned one thing in particular. Well, they've mentioned one subject in particular. They use it as a shorthand for something historical, something distant in the past, something very boring, very abstruse. Something that has become the joking shorthand for a Steve book. And I'll give you a little hint. That word is in the title of our next book. This is the grand strategy of the Habsburg Empire. Sorry, I don't mean to be cracking up. It's not going to be funny. It's not going to be this funny to more than a tiny handful of people. But still, this is a new book called The Grand Strategy of the Habsburg Empire. I didn't request it, but I have a suspicion I'll be reviewing it. So this is from Princeton. It comes out in the summer in hardcover. 400 pages long. Wow. Am I bratty enough to read about the Habsburg Empire on this? Oh, go. You knew what you were getting into when you married me. The Empire. I can't believe this. This is the joke. Something on the Habsburg Empire. That is the Steve book joke. The Empire of Habsburg Austria faced more enemies than any other European great power. Flanked on 4 sides by rivals, it possessed few of the advantages that explain successful empires. Its army was not renowned for offensive prowess, its finances were often shaky, and its populace was fragmented into more than a dozen ethnicities. Yet somehow Austria endured, outlasting Ottoman sieges, Frederick the Great, and Napoleon. This book tells the story of how this cash-strapped polyglot empire survived for centuries in Europe's most dangerous neighborhood without succumbing to the pressures of multi-sided war. Okay, now I'll give the publicist credit. That is about as good a pitch for the Habsburg Empire as I have heard a recent book do. So, okay, now we move on to the box, and then we'll be done with this for this mail haul for today. Let's see what we have. The box is from Norton. Norton is often very good. They're one of my consistently favorite publishers. So what? Oh, fantastic! Okay, this is another finished copy. This comes out next month, early next month. I've already read it. It's very, very good. This is by Marion Weavers. It's Jane and Dorothy. I can't make it out in the dim light here. The subtitle is A True Tale of Sense and Sensibility: The Lives of Jane Austen and Dorothy Wordsworth. And when I first saw it, I thought, and first started digging into it, I thought, yeah, you in the glut of Jane Austen writing, this is a smart approach. Approach her through the spectrum of somebody else, of something else, something other than another 600-page Jane Austen biography. But I don't think we ever saw this on this channel. Jane Austen and Dorothy Wordsworth were born just 4 years apart, in a world torn between heady revolutionary ideas and fierce conservatism. But their lives have never been examined together before. They both lived in Georgian England, navigating strict social conventions and new ideals, and they were both influenced by Dorothy's brother, the Romantic poet William Wordsworth, and his coterie. They were both supremely talented writers, yet often lacked the necessary peace of mind in their search for self-expression. Neither ever married. Jane and Dorothy uses each life to illuminate the other. For both women, financial security was paramount, and whereas Jane Austen hoped to achieve this through her writing, rather than being dependent on her family, Dorothy made the opposite choice and put her creative powers to the use of her brilliant brother, with whom she lived all her adult life. And Marion Weavers, oh, okay, I had the advanced copy, so I hadn't seen what she looked like. There she is, in the fields of England. She lives in the Lake District, just 5 miles from Grasmere, and she works for the Wordsworth Trust. She lectures on Dorothy Wordsworth for the Wordsworth Trust and is the author of several novels set in Georgian England under the pseudonym Anna Dean. And this is really good. It's a really good book. Those of you who are Jane Austen fans will read this with interest instead of what I'm sure you've experienced, something of what I have. You get the latest biography of Jane Austen. A little boredom creeps in because you've read so many. You've read this relatively thin story so many times. This makes that story come alive again. And as a wonderful side effect, it will send you to Wordsworth. Not only biographies of him, but also letters and his poetry. And that's always a plus. Wonderful. Okay, so we have, all right, so I'm going to try not to crack up too bad. Here we have Jane and Dorothy, a dual biography of Jane Austen and Dorothy Wordsworth. Fascinating. And the grand strategy of the Habsburg Empire, which is a bit of a Steve book. then Rising in Flames, a new history of Sherman's March to the Sea, of Sherman's making Georgia howl, as he put it. Torching farms, burning people, raping housewives, raping daughters, salting the earth in some places because Sherman knew his Roman history, and creating a new nation. Yes, indeed. That's absolutely true. Topsoil deep wounds of resentment. And, well, one critic at the time, a Boston critic at the time, said, you may think of this as a martial victory, but what he has done is carve a dividing line between two Americas, and he needn't have done it. Anyway, and then Pascal Garnier. Why does that name sound so familiar to me? I'll have to look him up. But this is Gallic Noir, Volume 1. Apparently this guy writes novellas, and I'm curious, those of you who might know about him, is he any good? I mean, I'll find out for myself, but I'm curious to know. I'm also curious to find out. I'll find out on my own, but I'm curious what a great white shark is doing on the cover of this book. Unless somebody is watching this channel and just decided, it's got to have something on the cover. Anyway, there we go. That is the first mail haul of the week. and it had ups and downs. So I'm gonna wrap this up, and I will be back soon. Thank you, BookTube.